Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Evil Within 2. No damage, no keys, no upgrades on Nightmare difficulty. I'm calling it a walkthrough, even though I fervently believe you cannot help people not take damage. You can only give them the tools and the knowledge and the insight needed to try and avoid it. Everything else is kind of up to them at that point. But hopefully the strategies herein will help you get through the tougher moments of this game. And we're coming up on one now, because this is Chapter 5, it's called Lying in Wait. And I'm going to be moving around this zone, picking up some of the ammunition, picking up some of the loot, some of the good stuff I can grab. And then we're going to be making our way to the entrance to City Hall, where we're going to be taking on the first real boss encounter of the game. Or not taking it on, as is the case here. So let's talk about the boss, shall we? So the creature coming up is essentially a big hulking giant that chases you around an environment, dealing massive damage if it strikes you, but generally being slow enough to give you enough chance to avoid it, to get away from it. And the tools that the game gives you to damage it are of course all your weapons, but there are additional red barrels scattered around the environment. You can either shoot the red barrels and get an explosion, or you can knock them over and get some kind of fire on the ground. It's entirely up to you in what you choose to do. So if you want to fight her, one of the strategies that I've used is you can run around the environment getting her to stand next to the barrels and then blow them up, or burn them, either way, it's up to you. And then once you've done that, there are well-placed tripwires that take photographs, and the photographs will slow the boss down for a couple of seconds, enabling you to get some free damage on it and then get away, and then kind of chain it to the next sequence, which will have another one of those photographs. And then once you've done that, you can proceed to hit it with whatever you've got left and then get rid of it, kill it, boom, and then you can loot the arena and you can do all that good stuff. Or you can move around the left-hand side of the environment and play hide and seek with the boss, get to a door, mash a button, and hopefully get in there safely and skip the encounter in its entirety. That's what we're going to be doing, and it's not the easiest thing to do because of the having to mash the button to open the door taking quite a long time, and this is where you're going to realise that the AI has been programmed to follow you and know where you are regardless of how far away it is, because I'm going to do a technique at the beginning that guarantees that we lose the boss, and there's almost no planet where this boss can understand where I am. There's one part of it that's designed to get her back on you, which is when you shoot a car. You shoot an explosive, it blows up a car, she immediately knows where you are. But even at that point, she never resets to a point where she'll walk back into the other area and lose you. So it's one of those things where the boss is kind of on you forever. One strategy that you can use is you can go, shoot the barrel, open up the pathway, then bait the boss to the other side of the area, get the boss stuck in one of those camera moments, run away from it, lose it, and then progress through the area that way, and that will work. Or you can do the strategy that I'm about to show you, where we're going to kind of tentatively play a cat and mouse with the boss and get it over with. So the comparison to this boss, I suppose you could say, is the Sadist, right? They kind of play the same role. The Sadist in Evil Within 1, if you're not familiar, was a man with a chainsaw who was kind of indomitable in his will to chase you down and kill you. And you damaged him, he took a lot of damage, and then he eventually died, and then you met up with him a few more times later on. This is kind of the exact same kind of thing, only some of the tools that you use to get rid of the Sadist don't really seem to be stuff you can use against this particular boss. One of the things I haven't tried is stealth assassinating him. Maybe you can stealth assassinate this boss, that could be really good, right? And another thing is, if you have the upgrade to do the executions with the smoke, maybe you can just smoke the boss and then stab it in the execution. That could be really cool. But unfortunately, in this particular run, we're not going to have access to those things because they're all upgrades. So instead, we're going to be doing it this way. So I tripped that first wire to kind of give myself the opportunity to run away from the boss, and I'm going to make a path around this side, climb up onto the entrance to City Hall, and then drop off the other side and go around the corner. At this point, the boss is over where we tripped the wire, confused and doesn't know where we are. So feasibly, we should never see the boss again, really, but that's just not how the game works. So I try something interesting here. I trip that to freeze the boss, and then I shoot the barrel, hoping that the boss won't hear this. I can't see the barrel because it's so fucking dark, but there you go. Hoping that maybe that would mask this section. It doesn't. The boss is already on its way to come get me, and depending on what happens now, depends on where the boss is. So I'm just going to do that, that's fine, the alarm goes off, we know this is going to happen, the boss is already coming. I'm going to shoot that barrel, And then over here, when you trip this, it's going to make 2 explosives. So I'm going to put a shock bolt there, I'm going to pick that one up, and then I'm going to sneak under this one. And what's going to happen is the boss is going to hit the shock bolt, then it's going to hit the explosive bolt, and that will give us enough time to open this door. This is a very tense doorway because it takes him 50 minutes to even try opening it, and then it takes him another 50 minutes to actually open it, and in this time, depending on what the boss does, will depend on whether or not you're going to get killed. So hopefully, it's stunned long enough to not be a problem, and then you're inside, and you've skipped the boss. And it looks really easy, doesn't it, and really fast, but it can be tricky, guys, so if you're having problems with it, just take it slow, understand the mechanics, and stun the boss with the shock bolt, stun it with the explosive, and get through that doorway. So this sequence, there's going to be 2 of the Lost in here, and best case scenario, you stealth kill both of them effortlessly and you don't waste any bottles. But this is me playing, and you know, thanks to my impatience, I'm probably going to have to break a few eggs. Or proverbial bottles in this case. So, you can probably skip these guys if you want to and just get to the other side, but there we go. There's the inevitable mistake. Here's the bottle once he steadies. There's the knife, and then his buddy's there, so I'm just going to run past him. And you can't skip this because you have to drag the thing, right? So chances are they'll hear that. There's the second bottle. There's another dead monster, and we can now take our time and get some stuff done. Push the whatever the cart is that's blocking the door, and then get into City Hall. So, the grand scheme of things, we wasted 2 bottles, it's not a big deal, we can always get them back. And we didn't waste any ammunition, which is a good thing. Except for the shock bolt that we used to doubly stun the boss. And I'm almost certain you don't need to use a shock bolt there, you can just get lucky with the AI sometimes. But the time that I snuck past everything and I didn't trigger the alarms, I didn't smash the barrels or do any of that, the boss still found me. So I feel like they've made it and programmed it in such a way that it's meant to be quite close and quite tense. And there was a time where she was literally on me on the door and I still was able to get inside. So it seems a little bit cinematic for the sake of being cinematic, potentially. So we hit the bench and we're going to do some upgrading. I'm going to replenish the shock bolt that I used, and that's probably going to be it, because the only thing coming up now is a boss fight against Obscura, and this is a pretty interesting boss because you don't have to do much. I'm going to pretty much exclusively use the pistol, and I think you should do too, because it's just the best way to save ammunition. The only tricky part, of course, is aiming, because aiming on this game is quite tricky. It takes some getting used to, but you will get there in the end, guys. I did as well. And all that's going to happen is this creature's going to freeze a timer, and then you have to shoot it in its old-fashioned camera face a few times, and then the timer will continue, and you have to do that till the timer stops. And there's a few things you can do here that's quite interesting, but it's very difficult to replicate. So on my first attempt at this boss, I managed to get the boss stuck. I led it around the left-hand side of the room, and I ran in between the separation in the wall, and I turned around waiting to shoot it, and the boss collided with the side of the wall and just infinitely ran towards me but could never get to me. And what this led to is, it never froze the timer. So I have footage of an Obscura kill on Nightmare where she never freezes the timer after the initial freeze. And I beat her without shooting any bullets. It was kind of insane, except for, you know, the first one does it you have to shoot to break the lock. And I was going to keep it for the video, because I thought, this can be replicated, this can be used, this could be useful. And then I tried to do it again, and I couldn't get it to work. So I had to do the fight the traditional way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the video up on YouTube. Maybe it'll help some speedrunners or somebody who want to really get deep into the game and understand how that worked, try to replicate it and then turn it into some kind of route. That'd be awesome. But I'm not the person that's going to do that. I'm going to study that boss a little bit further as I play more of the game, but for the most, it's just one of those happy accidents. So the victory that you're going to see is me just kiting her around the room. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. The one way is to just kite around something quite small, like one of the desk displays, or around the emitter itself, and all you do is you keep moving away from the boss as she chases you, and you just do the whole hide behind the car from the guy who is on when you play TIG or tag, depending on, you know, what you called it in your region. And you just kind of keep her at the opposite side of you, she'll attack, make sure you're not too close so you don't get hit, and then you keep doing that, she freezes time, you shoot the thing, you repeat ad nauseum. Or you can just make slow rotations of the room. It's seemingly a much safer tactic as long as you make sure she's behind you. If she's behind you, you're generally not in any problems. If she's on the roof, it can get a bit interesting, but for the most, it's a very fair boss, and you shouldn't have any real issue conquering it. But before we get there, we have to do a couple of mild puzzling. And this is literally just a comparison puzzle. There is a painting on the wall to our left that shows a picture of a rather elegant looking woman in a blue dress. She's facing the camera. She has a green jewel around her neck, and there is a rose in this vase. So pick up the jewels, put it on the mannequin, spin the mannequin to face you, and then put the flowers in the vase, and then hit the camera, and it'll open the door. Simple, quick, but a cool little puzzle.
Must mean something.
And this section here kind of reminds me of the hotel level in the first game. I was a big fan of the hotel level. I just like the idea of the rather affluent looking rooms and the decor, and it gives me a little bit of like an Overlook impression if you were a fan of The Shining, especially on a section coming up on the premiere. There's a moment where you're moving through a corridor like this and the carpet looks just like the one in The Shining, which I think is a really nice touch. So I'm putting on my laser pistol. If you've not seen this before, you'll notice that it is laser sight, just like classic Resident Evil, or less classic Resident Evil, because a lot of people don't like the ones with the lasers in them. But you'll notice, because of the bloom that's given off by the light sources, knowing where the laser is can be very tricky at times, and it makes it difficult to use, so you have to be careful. But look at the nice piece of artwork there on the wall, and then from this point onwards, there's going to be some cinematic poppings in of artwork that's gruesome and grisly, and kind of giving you an impression of who the artist is, who's a boss that's coming up. And I don't know if you actually have to examine them, but I examined them because I feel like it's one of those scripted moments. Once again, it might not be necessary, but in a moment such as this, all the doors are locked until you hit some invisible trigger. So you want to just kind of play along until the game lets you go to the next moment. And this game has a lot of these moments. It could be a criticism. I'm imagining some people will believe it to be one, because almost every time this happens, there's no danger. There's no wrong choices, and there's no decisions that lead to death. Like, it would be interesting if this was leading you to the correct door, and if you picked the wrong door, the door killed you. That'd be the type of thing I would expect from The Evil Within. That's the kind of thing that would have been in the first game. Just any excuse to kill the player, right? That's kind of what it does. And there you go. That light makes a noise, that painting turns red, and then when you examine this, it's going to trigger the door to open, and we can get to the next sequence. But it's all meticulously placed so that you're kind of second-guessing yourself, and you're wondering what's happening, and you're doubting, and it's increasing tension. Atmospherically, these moments are really strong, and they're one of the best parts of the game. But the problem with anything that's purely atmospheric is the second time you do it, it's dead. It's dead in the water, because you already know. The one thing that a game needs to keep you invested in atmosphere is the tension derived from believing yourself to be in a threat, from believing that at any time something can happen. When you know that nothing will happen, the atmosphere dies. And it's one of the interesting things about survival horror. Survival horror works in its purest forms because they limit you as a character. A lot of the problems that Sebastian has in this game are probably intentional to make it more difficult to play. And they're not doing that because they hate the player and they want you to suffer. They're doing that because that's what makes it so challenging and so grueling and so scary in a lot of cases. Knowing that you have these tools, even though they're limited, yet understanding that applying the tools is the hardest part, and knowing that in any other game you would simply shoot them in the head and they would die, or you'd shoot them in the leg and they'd fall over and you'd be safe. But in this game, can you do that? Are you confident enough that you can make that shot? Are you confident enough that it's not going to somehow, go wrong? And that's where a lot of the real tension comes from. And that's what's so good about playing on PC, because when I miss on PC, I felt like I missed. Whereas on console, when you miss, you feel like the fucking game's being evil again. But here is Stefano, and I put my laser on his face just then, could have shot him and broke the game, but I don't think it would let you do that. I should have shot, really, shouldn't I? But I'm a hoarder when it comes to ammunition. I'm so worried that something's going to go wrong. 100% holding every item I can. But follow the staircase down, once again, lots of ambience here, lots of atmosphere. And when you open the doorway, there's going to be a mannequin's head in the seat in front of you. The lighting is going to be tremendously dark, as we use one of the worst torches ever conceived in the history of illumination devices. But it's moody, atmospheric lighting, isn't it? It's not meant to pull focus. And then there's a nice jarring transition here as they try and scare you. And I feel like this is another section in The Evil Within 1 where something would have come alive here. There would have been some threat in this. One of those would have been real. And I think they missed a bit of a mark with that. They could have had this section have all the environments, you know, have mannequins in them and have it all tricked out with people in postures, frozen in poses, doing, you know, their whatever their deeds were when they worked here. And they could have had the mannequins mess with you in some way and perhaps elevated the, you know, the scare factor or even the combat factor, made it something that you have to fight. But they didn't go for that. And there's a part of me that kind of loves that. Because remember in The Last of Us, when I said that I wished that Naughty Dog had committed to just the atmosphere, instead of throwing some mundane fights at you that weren't necessary in the Pittsburgh area? Well, this game commits. So it's kind of bad for me to second guess it and critique it for committing, because I respect it that it did it. But at the same time, I played Condemned, and the mannequins in Condemned were terrifying. That was just scary stuff waiting to happen, because you would turn around and there'd be a mannequin directly behind you and stuff. There was all kinds of cheap jump scares. And I'm not the biggest fan of cheap jump scares, but they can help, you know, when you're making a horror game. Every so often it's okay to do one, I guess. Whereas this game seems to use the bloody communication device to give you a jump scare, which is annoying. But here is Obscura. She is the second boss of the game, but the first boss we'll be fighting, and she's going to freeze the emitter. So you have to shoot her in the camera to drop the field, and then the timer's going to tick down. And then from that point onwards, she's going to chase you. And you can hide from her if you want to, but I don't find hiding from her to be all that necessary, because you can just kind of move around the area being intelligent with your sprint, and when she turns around like that, it means she's going to freeze the device again. So I shoot her a few times here, wondering if I can regain her attention, but it didn't work. So best not to do that, guys. Learn from my mistakes. But she's on the roof now. When you hear the camera charging, she's going to do a big thrust, but then she'll settle, and then you can shoot the camera while it's steady, and hopefully you'll be able to get a stun. But it takes a few bullets to stun her in this phase. You're looking at maybe 7 bullets. I haven't counted it, but it's enough to sometimes occasionally have to reload at the worst possible time. But now she's down, I'm just going to be quite light on my stamina so I don't run out of stamina. Running out of stamina here is a death sentence because the regeneration is so slow, you will never ever get away. So just feather the stamina quite lightly, put something between you and the boss, and just stay diligent, use your ears, you'll know where she is by the sound. And right now she's been very passive, which is good. And we get to break it again, so that wasn't too bad. But I think I'm out of bullets. I know there's bullets in this room somewhere, so I'm going to run around here and grab some. But there's a chance that I might be putting the rifle on, because if you shoot her once with the rifle in the camera and shoot her once with a pistol bullet, it will instantly stun her. So you can get around having to shoot a ton. But in my book, wasting pistol ammo is the best thing to do in most circumstances, because it's not precious. You don't cry over spoilt bullets, do you? Shells, I cry over. Rifle rounds, I'll sob for a week. And same with the crossbow stuff. Wasting the crossbow stuff breaks my heart. But let's have a look. I don't know if I've mentioned, but if you crouch down, you tend to regenerate stamina faster, but during encounters where the enemies know where you are under a massive stamina penalty when it comes to regeneration, so it can still be quite difficult. But there's the rifle shot. She's dropping down onto the floor now. I'm going to pop the pistol back on, and we're going to put her down with 1 bullet here, or it should be 1 bullet, because that's what it was the last time. There we go, there's the 1 bullet. And I think that this is the final rotation of the emitter, and it's the end of the fight. But yeah, the attempt where I got her stuck was wonderful, because I didn't have to shoot any of these bullets, really. I shot her at the beginning, and that was it. But just keep giving her a wide berth, and then when the time happens, there's going to be a nice field of emissions, and then all you have to do, folks, is make your way outside of the city hall, and then you'll be on the next chapter, and we'll be moving towards the theatre, and having our inevitable meeting with Stefano, the camera killer. Or whatever his name is, technically. I just know that he's called Stefano. So I'm going to be moving around this building quite a lot, trying to find all the caches and all the things that they've left behind for me, but I end up going in a circle and not really finding too much, so feel free to skip to the part that's the next part of the video. I was really tempted to just trim this out and just say, then leave the building, have fun, but sometimes people struggle when you don't show everything in walkthroughs, so sometimes for those people, I like to leave in things that I would personally remove. And this is one of those buildings where there's quite a lot of stuff to find. It's just, I don't really know the layout of it perfectly. I know how to get to the boss, and then I know how to get out. I don't really know how everything links up. I know that this is the exit to the front, through there. But I didn't realise that by coming through this way, I think I'm going in a big circle back to where we just were. As there's a statue there with a key. And you might be wondering, Chris, why aren't you breaking the statues? You can get stuff from the keys. This is a no key run, dude. Can't do it, unfortunately, but you should. You totally should. In fact, a buddy of mine on Twitter is making a walkthrough for Classic Mode. And he said that the keys saved his ass, because on Chapter 13, he was able to open a bunch of lockers, and he got a bunch of the freeze bolts for his crossbow, and it made that section really easy. And it does, because the freeze bolts enable you to shatter the dudes by one attack or one bullet. So you can wait for 2 or 3 of them to be all crowded together, fire a freeze bolt, and then just execute them all by shooting them and get rid of them. Really powerful. Because that section is a nightmare, if you know what I'm talking about, on Stronghold. And it's a nightmare for a variety of reasons. But I will see you guys when we get there. But we're not quite there just yet. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.